Every time we went there, he'd say, "Sure, okay, just leave it out."
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this funeral service of thanksgiving and remembrance for Rodney's life. We're all drawn here from literally different parts of Australia, but one thing remains. Sorry about that. Is that a little bit better? Technology, I can get it wrong sometimes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this funeral service of thanksgiving and remembrance for Rodney's life. We're all drawn here because we've been invited, we're related, and he's been either a part of an organisation that we're representing, or he's been a good mate, to name a few of the relationships that he's had with you. Our lives have changed, and today is an historical day, because it's a day when we've come to remember, it's a day when we've come to mourn, and it's a day where we've come to celebrate the life of a truly remarkable man who really has helped our community be what it is today in more ways than one. We've also gathered here to support his family who have gathered here. Remember the special relationships that he had. Much loved husband at 54 years to Rosemary, a proud father to Kim and David, and a much admired father-in-law of Kimberly, a doting pop, an adored pop to Zoe and Zali. And we remember those who are overseas watching today as well. He was a special grandfather to his overseas grandson, Arbian, brother to Warren and Harvey, a brother-in-law to Powder and Zeta, and an uncle to their families as well. It was interesting in the paper we had written there that he was a loyal member to the Port Vincent community for 47 years. I don't think loyal can really sum up the amount of work that this man has really put into not only Port Vincent, but perhaps York Peninsula and beyond, with his involvement in other groups as well. And to say he'll be forever missed and forever loved is an understatement indeed, because words really can't describe how much this man means to you personally and means to us who are gathered here today. Because nothing's really going to be quite the same without him. And that's why we've gathered here, to remember, to share our loss, but more importantly, to celebrate and to remember and rekindle our friendships and remember the many good things that he has done for us. It goes without question that indeed his life was a life that was lived fully and fruitfully by any standard. None of us really know how long we've got on this earth. For some it might be an early age that we pass away, for others it might be a later age. And it's probably just as well that we don't know as well. One thing remains the same though, if we lived our life, or if we try and model our life on Rodney's, we will certainly make a really good contribution to our community. It's at times like this where we just need to stop and think about the adjustments that we need to make to our own lives. Family circle is diminished by one. Our community groups that Rodney was part of are diminished by one. But our lives do continue on without him, and we need to make adjustments to our own lives as we learn to continue living our own lives with Rodney physically not being with us. But one thing remains the same for each one of us, and that is we do have memories. Memories of this man that will always remain in our hearts, that we can always take with us. It's interesting, sometimes when prominent people depart this world, they might have roads named after them or buildings named after them and things like that. Rodney doesn't really need that, because we just need to look at some of the changes around Port Vincent, some of the events that happen around Port Vincent, and we'll see that he doesn't need to have things named after him, because he has left his mark on our community in a really positive way that only a role model can do. I knew Rodney probably primarily through my work, and also through talking to him through things that were happening in Port Vincent when I was tied up with some plaques that needed to be ordered, and also other aspects of finding out if I needed to know anyone. He was the go-to man, knowing Rodney, because he had a good source of contacts. And it's interesting, if he didn't know it, he would certainly know someone that would know something about what I was wanting to find out about. He had a wide network of friends. Now it's the time I'll be inviting Rodney's brother Harvey to come forward to share with us his life story.
Good morning all. Rodney William Button, born the 12th of May 1939 in the Butte Hospital, not far from here really. He was the eldest son of Jeff and Betty Button and his two brothers, obviously Warren and myself. His first years were spent moving around the mid-north with his mother and father. He went to 5 different schools in his very early years before they settled in Red Hill. He went to school at Red Hill and finished up at Snowdown for the high school. His first job was working in the local garage in Red Hill, and at night he worked in the telephone exchange. In 1955, the whole family moved to Adelaide. Rodney got a job at Weymouth Service, then Addis Motors, and then Ike Addis Motors as a service manager. During this time, he did national service. Some of the older ones would know what national service was back in those days. He loved ballroom dancing, and one night at the Montenegro Ballroom, he spied a little blonde girl in a red dress. I was probably there that night. And within 12 months, they had married and built a house up at Rostrevor. They lived there from 1966 to 1973. During this time, Kim was born. They moved to Port Vincent in October 1973. From the moment they arrived in Port Vincent, life was hectic. First with a deli, and then with the newsagent and the hardware store, both 7-day-a-week jobs, and finally later into Onga Pumps and the post office. David was born in 1974, and both boys went to Port Vincent School and then on to Millington High. Rodney was always involved in the community, loved being busy and being with people. Hala, the funeral director, said. He could be quite blunt, said exactly what he thought, and could be argumentative. But underneath he was loving and very emotional. He was very proud of his two sons and missed them terribly when they left Port Vincent to pursue their careers. When Kimberly came into his life, she was a daughter he never had. He had given up hope of being a grandfather. Then Zoe arrived. He was overcome with joy, especially when she brought around something broken for Pop to fix. Then Arvian came along. He had numerous overseas trips to Bali and Java, even though he was not keen on travelling and going over there. Zali came along and brought new joy. He loved their visits Sunday morning, breakfasts with the lawn. His health deteriorated the last few years. He tried to keep playing bowls, but when it became too much, he whisked around on his gopher, telling mothers what they were doing wrong. Sounds like you. And had a chat with everyone, and always a drink. RSL, tidy towns, and granddaughters kept him busy and happy right to the end. He was cheerful, and when asked if he wanted to be resuscitated, he replied, "Carrot, no. Apple, okay." I don't quite...
Vegetable.
Fruit and vegetables, yeah. He was relieved when Dave came home from working overseas, seeing Rosemary settled into a new unit, and only disappointed he didn't get to see his grandson again. He passed away very peacefully in Yorktown Hospital as Rosemary sat by his side. A busy life, well lived. Goodbye, Rodney.
Thank you for reading that. A little bit of insight that what I didn't know, and I think probably some of us didn't know either, to do with where Rodney had grown up. We've got 7 other people to speak here, obviously, just before, well, how can we have anything less with a man who has achieved so much? I'm going to be reading two eulogies, or 2 pieces that have been asked to be read today. The first is from Lee Aldenhoven and his family. I'll read this first and then I have another message to read as well. This is from Lee and family. Firstly, Deb and I would like to extend our sincere condolences to Rosemary, Kim and Kimberly, David and the grandchildren. Regretfully, we can't be in attendance here today due to a family funeral in Port Lincoln. Nevertheless, I'd like to share some of my thoughts and memories of my very good and respected friend, Rodney. Rodney was a visionary, an ideas man, and a Mr. Fix-It. Mr. Fix-It because no matter what it was that needed doing, Rodney always had the parts, the tools, and the expertise to get the job done. An ideas man because no matter how hard the problem was, Rodney would always come up with an idea to get things done easily and without a drama. But more importantly, a visionary. He had the unique ability to have a vision for the future, and what he wished for was his love for Rosemary and his family, and there was pride in his voice when he spoke about his boys. But when he spoke of his grandchildren, there was always a little tear in the corner of his eye. He showed immense affection to his family, and they came first and foremost, although probably from time to time they felt they mightn't have. It was an unconditional love that he had for you all. Rodney had a vision for our community, and his involvement in the Progress Association, the Gala Committee, Tidy Towns, Port Vincent RSL Sub-Branch, the Council, and the various sporting clubs will show that his vision was always for the long term. Rodney liked to play the long game. He liked to look to the future, 10 and 20 years, and have a plan and slowly work towards it. And he never gave up on achieving the long-term goals that he had. Yes, Rodney really was a visionary, but more importantly, he was my friend. Farewell, Rodney. And when I get to where you're going, we can have a chat again. I've received a phone call and also an email from Darren Braun, who's our current Mayor of the York Peninsula Council. He'd asked for this to be read out. Rodney was an elected member of the District Council of Midleton, representing the East Ward from 1981 till the amalgamation in 1997. He was elected member from the amalgamation from the 10th of February 1997 until they actually had the first election of the amalgamated council, which was held later in 1997. He was then elected the member for the Gunflat Ward for the District Council of York Peninsula from May 2000 until November 2006. He served on the Development Assessment Panel for many years, and during that time he was a presiding member. He also served on the Murray-Darling Association. And on behalf of the Council, I would like to acknowledge his wonderful service to our community and to pass on our heartfelt condolences to his family at this time. Sorry for the sound effects here. I would now like to call upon Grant Trotter to come forward.
Good morning. This is going to be a tough one for me. Rodney William Button, known to my kids as Uncle Rodney. The rest of you knew him as Rodney, Button, Chrome Dome, Mudguard, because he's shiny on top and shitty underneath, Fly, and quite a few other words, other names not suitable to mention today. Once you met him, you'd have forgot him. This is a summary of Rodney's dedication to the community. In the early 1970s, Rodney and Rosemary purchased their holiday home at Mandy Street, Port Vincent. This became their permanent residence until recent move to Cameron Street, Port Vincent. Rodney, Rosemary, Kim moved to Port Vincent in 1973 when they purchased a deli on the Main Street corner. In May 1974, David was born. 1976, they purchased the Port Vincent News Agency and hardware store. While there, set up a business at YP Pumps. In 1988, Rodney and Rosemary purchased the Port Vincent Post Office and ran that until 2005. As a resident of the town, you always took an active interest in the community. One example is they began business at the deli on Monday the 29th of October 1973. Wednesday the 31st of October, he attended the AGM of the Port Vincent CFS and became a member. The following year, he was elected Secretary-Treasurer. This position he held for 6 years, In later years, he became part of the B Force. Be at the station when they leave and be there when they return. He was always one of the brigade goaters who actively provided support for the brigade in the area. He was on the Port Vincent School Parents Committee from 1974 to 1986, including 6 years as chairperson, and was a driving force in re-establishing the Aquatic Centre at Port Vincent in the 1980s, when funding was ceased and the aquatics program lapsed. Kim started school in 1974 in Port Vincent, aged 4 years and 9 months. This was to get the number of students up to 12 to prevent the school closing. He was a foundation member and the last secretary of the Southern York Peninsula Tourist Association. This committee organised and produced a tourist map of the peninsula showing roads, points of interest, names, the beaches and street maps in all major towns. He was a member of the Port Vincent Organising Committee for the celebration of 100 years of District Council of Miniton. He was a member of the Port Vincent Progress Association from 1979 till 2004 as an elected member of Council ex officio. He was a member of the Miniton District Hospital Board. He served as Justice of the Peace for over 36 years. He was an inaugural member of the Port Vincent Quayside Committee, founded in 1980, a subcommittee of the Progress Association that preceded the Port Vincent Tidy Towns Group. He was a member and treasurer of Port Vincent Garden Committee for many years. He was a member of the Bowling Club since 1997, and was president for 4 years. He was a member of the Port Vincent RSL, president for 12 years. Although not a golfer, he was a willing volunteer at the Port Vincent Golf Club. We think Rosemary may have influenced him in this. He was a councillor for the District Council of Miniton, and then District Council of York Peninsula from 1980 to 2004. He was on the District Council of York Peninsula Assessment Panel as an independent chairperson. He was a member of the Voting Facilities Advisory Committee from 2001 for many years. He was a committee member and past president of the Curramulka Football Club and was on the steering and management committee for the amalgamation of football and netball teams when the CMS Pros were formed. In 1987, Rodney was the council representative on the York Peninsula Bushfire Prevention Committee. At the first meeting, he was elected chairperson and held this position for over 23 years. No one has wanted the job, I think. He became a member of the Murray-Darling Association in 2002. He was treasurer of the board and also vice chairman of the association. He was inaugural chairperson and co-founder of the Region 8 Murray-Darling Association. Rodney's commitment to water issues was not just from business interests, but from a broader perspective, which has seen him involved in the establishment of Region 8 of the Murray-Darling Association, which gives the area a voice in water issues. And we did not have this previously. Rodney was a strong supporter of harvesting of rainwater for all homes in our council area. He was part of the Development Assessment Panel, requirements for new buildings in the council area. And when he retired, he enjoyed being involved with the Tidy Towns Committee. Rodney, with the support of Rosemary, has been a civic-minded citizen, supported the town, community and district. His untiring work was done without thought or reward, and he was always there when support was needed. In 2010, Rodney and Rosemary and family attended the Government House and received the Premier's 2010 Australia Day Award for community service. Next day, we congratulated Rodney on his efforts and thanked the Council for naming him District Council of York Peninsula Australian Citizen of the Year for 2010. A great friend who will be missed very much. Please remember him for his enthusiasm and dedication to our community. Thank you.
I'd now like to call upon Peter Stockings to come forward.
I think we Rodney and I first became acquainted through our wives who had attended primary school together, so it was a great connection. I think Trot's stolen a fair bit of what I wanted to say, but that's fine.
Sorry.
No, shit, no. Water was how Rodney and I became more involved. If you ever wanted to know about getting water from A to B, then Rodney was the man. There would not be many on the southern York Peninsula that had not engaged Rodney to fix a pump, obtain water from a well, a bore, supply water for your farm or domestic supply. Many times we ran our piggery pumping bore water for some 1,500 plus pigs, but Rodney would come at any time the pump packed up and fix it. The two girls would sit up there for a long time while we fixed things. We also had a few refreshments fixing things too. And we would then either, he would upgrade it, fix it, or get a brand new pump to come down within a very short time when you're feeding a lot of pigs. Things like frictionless size of pipe you needed for the job were all part of the service Rodney provided. Rodney's wonderful knowledge and ability to understand what was needed was immeasurable. The water issue became more of a prominence with Rodney on council as to ways to better use the resource as it was starting to cost more. The drought, lower rainfall, or overuse affected the Murray-Darling supply. Rodney asked me to help through the York Regional Development Board, and this we did together, attending many meetings, trying to encourage over the region the councils to form what the Trot said was Region 8 as the Murray-Darling Association, which we achieved. We were the last users of the Murray-Darling and who were without a voice, so Rodney became that voice and the inaugural chair. Rodney held that office for many years, attending with Rosemary all over the Murray-Darling region, attending meetings and contributing as he always did. Most of this was at his own expense, and in the end, as our Region 8 Council support all over our region dropped off, water was so important to Rodney, and he despaired at the collective councils as they failed to support the involvement. Rodney served as the Gunflat Councillor and the new Amalgamated Council from its inception until he retired. His time on council over many years was, if you had the chance to see him operate, always made things be seen from a different light. I was privileged over 11 years attending through my job as he told it as it was, not what might have been comfortable. Thank you for a wonderful contribution, Rodney, to the area. I, like all, will miss the yarns and hearing it like it was, not as they wanted. Thanks, Rodney.
I'd like to now call upon Ray Nagar to come forward, please.
Thank you. May I please start by paying my respects to wife Rosemary, sons Kim, David, daughter-in-law Kimberly, grandchildren Zoe and Zali and Arvian, and the brothers Warren, Harvey and their families. My wife Savannah and I have been friends with Rodney and Rosemary since about 1983. If my memory serves me correctly, this came about because of our common interest in water and pumps. When we all attended the Yonka Pump Shop training courses, actually more booze-ups and barbecues in the plush Melbourne suburb of Toorak, and often at the home of Yonka's owner, the managing director, Mr. Don Davey. Don was a great host and a good teacher and promoter, and it was always a lot of fun when Rodney would poke a bit of fun at Don by telling him how to improve the product, as we both dealt with many other brands, including Don's father's company, Davey Pumps. Go figure that. Don Davey Pumps. We both did this as an annual event for the best part of 5 years, and that I recall, but Rosemary may have a better recollection than I do. Rodney knew his trade well, and there was no task that would ever beat him, and that's been well and truly mentioned today. He was my direct link to all of York Peninsula and the Flinders Ranges councils. Along with Mr Jim Hulley, we would circumnavigate the region of 10 or 11 member councils, including Port Augusta and Whyalla, to ensure that their needs and messages to the higher authority was getting through. Rodney was entirely dedicated to the cause and assisted me greatly when it came down to being the honest brokers for the state. And while defending the state's requirements, we often had to correct the intellectual dishonesty that often prevailed with some of the public service departments and even other green NGOs and politicians. He was no slouch in telling him how he felt. Rodney was no slouch when it came to the crunch. He also worked with Jim and I when we were going through tough financial times for the association. As a team, we got our house in order. If you ever heard the term herding cats, you would understand that his standing up to the misinformed and misinformation, and I'm sure we were kindred spirits in this respect. Anyone that knows me knows I don't keep quiet either. His long-standing in local government of his district earned Rodney a great deal of respect of locals, who were his clients, his friends, and just local residents who recognised his commitment to his community. And I'm pleased to hear what I've heard today already. I had a nickname for him, actually, and I often called him the Mayor of Port Vincent, even though Port Vincent wasn't a council warrior, and he was definitely the man. His long standing with the Murray-Darling Association as both a member and his regional role as a long-standing board member with the MDA, volunteering his time and effort for the best part of 18 years that I'm aware of, had to end when his health issues started creeping into his life. I feel blessed to have had Rodney as a good and sincere friend who often rode shotgun with me on many of the seminars, conferences and country regional meetings up until my departure, my resignation, having served over 50 years of the industry, and 35 to 36 of those linked with Rodney Button. Over a year ago, I received a call from another kindred spirit in the MDA, Mr Ken Rogers, who happened to be the MDA chairman in my final 4 years at the helm. Rodney was currently then a board member. Ken informed me that Rodney was not well, and as we had not caught up face to face since 2017 due to my overseas work, I phoned my old mate up to learn a bit more for myself what was the situation. I have to say, Rosemary, that I was shocked and feeling a bit guilty that we had not spoken for those last 2 years. Just the same, I made it my business to hit the road and call into Port Vincent and have a chat with her and a cuppa with my old mate. Rodney was himself, very accepting of his fate, just as down to earth as you would expect him and know him to be. I never told him, but this saddened me as I just didn't imagine this largest life bloke would be permanently attached to an oxygen bulb. That was a few months back, and again I assumed wrongly that he would still be around when I ever got to call in or phone him. Farewell, my friend, farewell, Rodney. In closing, I feel honoured to be invited to speak today and express my sincere condolences to you, Rosemary, Kim, Kimberly, David, and the grandchildren, Zoe, Zali, and Arlen. We know you will be sorely missed. May God rest your soul in peace. Thank you.
I'd now like to call upon Paul Stubblefield to come forward.
Not to overlap what's been said, but if I do, Rodney deserves an encore or two anyway. From the time Rodney and Rosemary arrived with him in 1973 to live permanently in Port Vincent, it soon became evident Rodney's keenness to be involved and contribute to the community. He joined in and involved himself in so many committees and town activities, always offering help and rolling up his sleeves to be a practical contributor. At
particularly entertaining character was there, Rodney, with more stories than the naked city, for those that can remember. Brutally honest and such a quiet achiever, doing the job without the fuss or need for praise. He was a very caring person to friends and especially his family. His acknowledgements for his services, as you've previously heard, were well earned and richly deserved. He did so much for so many. We've heard a bit of this, but Rodney was absolutely delighted in fixing or solving the impossible. A request for a part to fix an obsolete piece of equipment resulted in, well, I'll just go and check out the warehouse and let you know. Later it'd be a call. Yes, no worries. Got two of them. You boys got a lot of work with that. It was a very rare form. I will treasure his friendship and his visit to see me and Adele, and especially in the last months when he was really doing it tough. He would see the roller door up, knowing I was home, and sure enough, up the drive on his gopher for a beer and a catch-up chat. They often get poor, but so really he was truly a great mate and a genuine friend you could absolutely rely on. The world will not be the same without him, and I know he's on his way up there with a bag full of tricks and a box of suggestions to keep the whole place running smoothly. We will all so dearly miss him. Farewell, God bless you. Thank you.
I'd like to share a little story. Early one morning, woke up, our pump wasn't going. Phoned YP Pumps, brought me on the phone. What's the problem? I said, it's not going. I said, well, I guess that's why you're phoning me. So I told him what I'd checked the fuse and there were lights going and all the rest. He said, right. I said, now, can I bring it down to you? He said, no. He said, you can do this yourself. Told him what pump it was. Oh yeah, he said, I sold that to someone new who he had sold it to. He said, what do you need to do? I said, Rodney, I'm not very mechanically minded. He said, you can do this. So I went to work, he told me exactly what I needed to do, what panel I needed to pull off, the electronic part, which I was very wary of electricity. He said, yeah, he said, just make sure you have it unplugged. Very good. I said, right, now I did what he did. And I pulled something else. He said, now watch out because there's a big spring there and everything will come out to greet you in a great hurry. So he said, just make sure you're holding it. And he was right. It did come out to greet me in a big hurry. And down the side of our house I was picking up the spring and all manner of little diaphragms and other things. And he was just reassuring me with the fact that my hearing wasn't very good when I was relaying the story to him. Cleaned everything out, put it back together, turned it on, went for about another 20 years. I know how long we've been in the house, and I remember when I phoned Rodney. Every now and again he would remember and ask, now how's that pump? I said, it's still going. I said, I have no intention of pulling it apart any time soon. Such was the man. You know, just his knowledge was incredible. We've heard just so many different stories of him, and some are more suited to be told here, and I'm very sure there are one or two that perhaps are going to be shared down at the Bowls Club as well. Let's just pause for a minute, listen to a piece of music, and as we do this, we can just reflect back on some of our memories. Moonshine,
on your wall. Marble statuettes are standing stately in the hall. But through the timely crowd that has your life to found, help you dry your tears. When the new waters off on your crystal chandelier. Never did fit in too well with the folks you knew. When it's plain to see that the likes of me don't fit with you. So you traded me for the gaiety of the well-to-do. And you turned away from the love I offered you. Oh, the crystal chandeliers of Ireland, the paintings on your wall, the marble statuettes are standing stately around the hall. But will the timely crowd that has your life been loud help you dry your tears? When the new words on your crystal chandelier. I see your picture in the news most every day. You're the chosen girl of the social world, so the stories say. But a paper smile only lasts a while and then it fades away. And the love we knew will come home to you someday. Oh, the crystal chandeliers on Ireland, the paintings on your wall, the marble statuettes are standing stately in the hall. But will the timely crowd that has your life be loud help you dry your tears? When the new waters off on the crystal chandelier. When the new waters off on the crystal chandelier.
We were talking about the music earlier on. We were going through different songs, and Kate and I were thinking too, this is a lovely song, and we both like it, and we're very just more than chances playing that. No matter what the circumstances or what the age, the death of someone who's been part of our family circle comes, it's always really hard to accept that indeed they have left the nest. It's important for us to go from here and to remember that Rodney certainly lived his life well, served his family, served our community, and did make a difference. Hard-working man, good sense of humour, man who gave back to our community far more than he ever received. When we look at these qualities, there really is something that we can all benefit from, having seen how Rodney lived his life, and to be able to use as an example for our own lives and what we do in society as we continue living our own lives as we move from here. It's important that we not leave this place with despair or heartache. It's important that we mourn, it's important that we grieve, but more importantly, it's really important that we cherish the many good memories that he has left for each one of us. A man who'll be respected, who will be remembered for his respect, his love, his positive ways, his honest and open frankness about pretty much everything. So there was no beating around the bush when you're talking to him or he was talking to others. His devotion to his family and his unconditional concern for his friends or those who he counted as friends. Rodney, we're coming to the time we'll be laying you to rest, because it's hard to believe that you've outlived your physical body, but It's a structure that carried you around while you're here on earth. We have our memories that we can keep with us. These are things that no one can ever take away. It's a lasting legacy that you've left for all of us here. And so since we've entrusted you to be cremated, we say earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. Your memory, the little things that made who you were, live on with each one of us. And as we move from this place, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. The sun shine warm upon your face. The rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this portion of Rodney's service. Shortly I'll now be inviting Barry Tozer to come forward. I ask you all to recite the Ode of Remembrance, and I ask you all to be upstanding as we remember Rodney's national service.
They shall grow not old, as we the left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trevor. I'm representing the federal government today. And we'll go a little bit on Rodney's national service. Rodney William Button served in the army as a signaller. He learnt lots of stories. During his national service in 1957, he attained the rank of private following his boot camp with the 16th National Service Training Battalion. His service number was S28770, everything easy to remember. And he received the Australian Defence Medal and the Anniversary of National Service Medal. Rosemary and family, on behalf of the people of Australia, I now present this flag from the nation to commemorate his service to his country.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please remain standing? For those of you who are watching online, there have been quite a few people watching courtesy of the internet today. We'll be concluding our live stream now. For the rest of you who are gathered here, I'll be inviting you to come forward. We've got some rosemary, very specially collected this morning by the family. I'm inviting you to come forward to take a sprig of rosemary and to place it upon Rodney's coffin as a token of your love and remembrance. We also have poppies here for currently serving or men and women who have served Australia. From our time here, you're invited to join with the family, heading back to the Port Vincent Memorial Bowling Club for refreshments. It's a time that we'll be having slightly wonderful. May he now rest in peace.